Right now, someone is scrolling through social media, posting their every thought, sharing their every plan, broadcasting their every emotion. And they wonder why they feel empty, why nothing seems to work out, why their dreams never materialize. Here's what they don't understand. The ancient Stoics discovered something profound about human nature over 2,000 years ago, something that goes against everything our modern culture teaches us. Something that could completely transform your life if you're brave enough to apply it. The secret: silence is power, not the kind of silence that comes from having nothing to say, but the deliberate, intentional silence that protects your growth, guards your energy, and allows your dreams to take root in fertile soil before the harsh winds of opinion can destroy them. Think about this. When you plant a seed, do you dig it up every day to check if it's growing? Do you parade it around for everyone to see? No. You protect it. You give it darkness, privacy, and time to develop roots strong enough to withstand storms. Your life works the same way, but most people never learn this. They expose everything prematurely. They seek validation before manifestation. They share their victories before they're secure and their plans before they're ready. And they wonder why nothing blooms. The Stoics understood something we've forgotten. Not everything deserves to be shared. Some things are sacred. Some things need protection. Some things grow stronger in silence than they ever could under the spotlight. In the next several minutes, I'm going to share 11 specific things that Stoic philosophy teaches us to guard carefully. Each one represents a crucial area of life where silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Where privacy isn't hiding, it's protecting. Where discretion isn't fear, it's strategy. But here's my challenge to you. If you're serious about applying these principles, drop this commitment in the comments right now. I guard what matters most. Also, make sure to subscribe to Strength Within because we're building a community of people who understand that true power often whispers rather than shouts. Let's dive in. Principle 1. Guard your achievements in silence. Picture yourself standing at the peak of a mountain you've just climbed. The view is breathtaking. The accomplishment is real. And deep inside, you feel that quiet satisfaction that comes from overcoming genuine difficulty. Now imagine you immediately pull out your phone and start broadcasting this achievement to everyone you know, posting photos, writing captions about your journey, seeking validation from people who weren't there and don't truly understand what it took. What just happened? You took a profound personal victory and turned it into a performance. You transformed an internal triumph into an external spectacle. And in doing so, you diluted its power. The ancient Stoics understood something crucial about achievement. True fulfillment doesn't come from external applause. It comes from internal growth. It emerges from the silent transformation that happens when you overcome obstacles, develop character, and become more than you were before. When Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome and perhaps the greatest Stoic philosopher, achieved victories in battle or governance, he didn't parade them for public admiration. Instead, he retreated to his private journals and reflected on how these experiences could make him wiser, more virtuous, and more aligned with reason. Why? Because he understood that ego and vanity are like weeds in the garden of the soul. When you constantly seek external validation for your achievements, you're actually feeding these weeds. You're teaching yourself that your worth depends on other people's opinions. You're building your sense of self on the unstable foundation of public approval. The Stoics recognized that this path leads nowhere good. External recognition is fleeting, applause fades, praise evaporates, and if your sense of accomplishment depends on these temporary reactions, you'll find yourself in an endless, exhausting cycle of seeking more validation, achieving more visible success, and never feeling truly satisfied. But here's the deeper wisdom. Real achievement isn't about what you display. It's about what you become. The person who overcomes fear develops courage. The person who persists through difficulty builds resilience. The person who acts with integrity cultivates virtue. These transformations are invisible to others, but they're the true measures of a life well lived. When you keep your achievements private, you create space for genuine self-reflection. You can ask yourself, did I do this for the right reasons? Did I act according to my values? Did I grow from this experience? These questions lead to real wisdom, but they require silence to be heard. The Stoics also understood that constantly talking about your achievements can breed resentment in others and arrogance in yourself. When you make a show of your success, you're essentially saying, "Look how much better I am than you." Even if that's not your intention, that's often how it's received. And you create distance between yourself and others, replacing genuine connection with performance and comparison. Moreover, there's a subtle psychological phenomenon at play. When you talk extensively about your achievements, your brain can mistake the telling for the doing. You get a dopamine hit from the praise and recognition, which can actually reduce your motivation to pursue the next challenge. You've already received the reward, external validation, so why push forward? By keeping your achievements to yourself, you maintain hunger. You stay focused on the intrinsic rewards: growth, mastery, contribution. You build a sense of self-worth that's independent of others' opinions. And paradoxically, you often inspire more respect than if you had broadcast your success. People notice quiet competence. They see consistent results. They observe character over time. And this kind of earned respect based on sustained excellence rather than self-promotion is far more valuable and enduring. The Stoic path invites you to find satisfaction in the doing, not in the telling. To measure success by internal standards, virtue, wisdom, integrity, rather than external metrics like likes, comments, or praise. To build a foundation of self-respect so solid that external validation becomes irrelevant. This doesn't mean you can never share accomplishments or that all recognition is problematic, but it means being intentional about when, why, and how you share. It means checking your motivations. It means ensuring that your primary satisfaction comes from within, and any external sharing is secondary. So the next time you achieve something meaningful, sit with it quietly first. Let it settle into your bones. Reflect on what it taught you. Allow the internal transformation to complete before you even consider whether to share it externally. You might find that many of your achievements never need to be shared at all. They're complete in themselves, enriching your character without requiring an audience. Drop this affirmation in the comments if you're ready to embrace this principle. My achievements are complete in themselves. Principle 2. Keep your unfinished battles private. Every person faces challenges that haven't been overcome yet. Obstacles you're still wrestling with. Patterns you're still trying to break. Weaknesses you're still working to strengthen. These unfinished battles are part of your growth journey. But here's a question. Do these struggles need to be broadcast to the world? The Stoics would say no. And their reasoning reveals a profound understanding of human psychology and the nature of personal transformation. When Epictetus, who began his life as a slave and became one of the most influential Stoic teachers, faced tremendous adversity, he didn't spend his energy complaining about his circumstances to everyone who would listen. Instead, he internalized these experiences, extracted their lessons, and used them as raw material for his own development. Why this approach? Because speaking constantly about your unresolved challenges serves several counterproductive purposes. First, it can become a form of identity reinforcement. Every time you tell someone about your struggle, you're essentially telling yourself, "This is who I am. This is my story." And while acknowledging challenges is important, constantly rehearsing them can actually make them more entrenched. You begin to identify with the problem rather than with your capacity to overcome it. Second, sharing unfinished battles often attracts unhelpful responses. Some people will offer sympathy that keeps you stuck in victim mentality. Others will provide shallow advice that doesn't fit your unique situation. Still others will judge you, using your vulnerability against you later. The Stoics understood that not everyone deserves access to your internal struggles. Third, there's the subtle trap of seeking validation for your difficulties rather than solutions. When you talk about your challenges, you often receive social rewards: attention, sympathy, connection. These rewards can actually make part of you resist solving the problem, because solving it would mean losing those social benefits. The Stoic alternative is powerful. Internalize your struggles. Use them as private training grounds for developing virtue. Every challenge is an opportunity to build courage, wisdom, self-control, or justice. But this transformation happens in the quiet depths of your character, not in the public arena of social sharing. Marcus Aurelius faced wars, plagues, betrayals, and personal losses. Yet when you read his Meditations, you find very little complaint. Instead, you find someone using adversity as fuel for philosophical growth. He asked himself, how can I face this with courage? What can this teach me? How can I maintain virtue despite difficulty? This internal approach doesn't mean you never seek help or support. The Stoics weren't advocating for toxic self-reliance or suffering in silence when assistance is needed, but they were advocating for discernment. Choose carefully who you share with, and share with the intention of gaining wisdom or genuine support, not validation or sympathy. There's also the matter of dignity. The Stoics valued maintaining composure and self-respect even in difficult circumstances. Constantly broadcasting your struggles can erode your sense of dignity. It can make you feel exposed, vulnerable, and dependent on others' reactions for your emotional stability. By keeping your unfinished battles private, you maintain agency. You remain the primary author of your story. You decide what these challenges mean and how they shape you. You don't hand that narrative power to the court of public opinion. Moreover, privacy creates the ideal conditions for genuine transformation. Just as a caterpillar needs the darkness and solitude of the cocoon to transform into a butterfly, your personal growth often requires privacy to unfold properly. Constant external input and observation can actually interfere with the delicate process of change. When you do overcome a challenge that you've been working through privately, the victory is sweeter. It's purely yours. You didn't rely on external cheerleading or validation to get you through. You found the resources within yourself, and that builds a foundation of self-trust and inner strength that no amount of external support could create. The Stoic approach also protects you from the danger of premature celebration or external discouragement. If you announce every challenge you're facing, you open yourself to people celebrating small progress as if it's final victory, or discouraging you when you face setbacks. But when you keep these battles private, you can maintain a realistic, steady perspective on your journey. This principle extends to how you view others as well. When you see someone going through difficulty, the Stoic approach is to offer quiet support without demanding they share all the details. Respect their privacy. Allow them the dignity of working through their challenges without becoming a public spectacle. So guard your unfinished battles. Work through them with the help of carefully chosen mentors or friends if needed, but don't make them your public identity. Let the transformation happen in the sacred privacy of your own development. And when you do emerge stronger, that strength will be authentic, tested, and entirely your own. Drop this in the comments. I transform privately and emerge stronger. Principle 3. Never broadcast your acts of kindness. Imagine walking through a dark room and lighting a candle. The flame is small, gentle, unassuming, but it changes everything. It provides warmth and light without demanding recognition or praise. It simply serves its purpose. This is how the Stoics viewed genuine kindness. In our modern world, we've created something strange: performative generosity. People document their charitable acts, post about their good deeds, and broadcast their kindness as if it's a form of currency that can be exchanged for social approval. But the Stoics understood something crucial. When kindness becomes a performance, it loses its essence. It transforms from a genuine expression of virtue into a transaction. You're no longer being kind for its own sake. You're being kind for the recognition it brings. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher and statesman, wrote extensively about genuine generosity. He emphasized that true kindness is given freely, without expectation of return, including the return of praise or recognition. The moment you announce your good deed, you've already collected your payment in the form of attention and approval. Think about the psychology of this. When you help someone and immediately tell others about it, what are you really saying? Look how good I am. Look how generous. Look how virtuous. Even if those aren't your conscious thoughts, that's the subtext of the announcement. And here's the trap. Once you start performing kindness for recognition, it becomes addictive. You begin choosing acts of generosity based on their social media potential rather than on genuine need or authentic connection. You help people in visible ways while ignoring opportunities for private assistance. The performance becomes more important than the purpose. The Stoics advocated for a different approach: anonymous kindness, help without announcement, give without fanfare, serve without seeking credit. This approach protects the purity of your intention and maximizes the impact of your generosity. When you keep your good deeds private, you create space for genuine self-reflection. You can ask yourself, why did I do this? Was my motivation pure? Did I act from virtue or from the desire for recognition? This honest self-examination is impossible when you're immediately broadcasting every generous act. Moreover, public announcement of kindness can actually harm the recipient. When you post about helping someone, you've potentially exposed their vulnerability or need to your entire network. You've made their private struggle public. You've turned them into a prop in your performance of virtue. The Stoics were acutely aware of the importance of treating others with dignity and respect. Genuine kindness honors the recipient's privacy and autonomy. It doesn't use them as a vehicle for your own reputation building. There's also a spiritual dimension to this principle. Many wisdom traditions speak about the right hand not knowing what the left hand does when it comes to generosity. This points to a profound truth. The best acts of kindness happen almost unconsciously, flowing from character rather than calculation. When you've internalized virtue so deeply that kindness becomes your default setting, you don't think about announcing it. It's just who you are. You see a need and respond. You notice an opportunity to help and take it. No performance, no announcement. Just authentic expression of a generous character. By keeping your good deeds private, you also develop immunity to one of the most subtle forms of pride, the pride of the good person. When you constantly broadcast your kindness, you're building an identity around being generous. And while that might seem positive, it's still ego-based. You're still deriving your sense of self from external actions and recognition. The Stoic ideal is to act virtuously without attachment to the identity of being virtuous. You're kind because kindness is right, not because you're a kind person. This subtle shift removes the ego from the equation and allows your actions to flow from a deeper place. There's also practical wisdom here. When you develop a reputation as someone who publicly announces all their good deeds, people become cynical. They start questioning your motives. They wonder if you would still be generous if there was no one to witness it. But when your kindness is quiet and consistent, it speaks for itself over time. People notice. They see your character through your actions, not your announcements. And the respect and trust you earn through quiet consistency is far more valuable than the temporary applause you might get from broadcasting your generosity. This doesn't mean you can never share stories of kindness, or that all generosity must be completely secret. But it means checking your motivation. Are you sharing to inspire others toward genuine generosity, or are you sharing to enhance your own image? The intention makes all the difference. The Stoic path invites you to find satisfaction in the act itself, not in the recognition. To measure your character by whether you helped when no one was watching, not by how many people praised you for helping. To build a foundation of genuine virtue that doesn't depend on external validation. So the next time you have an opportunity to help someone, do it quietly. Let the act be complete in itself. Resist the urge to document, share, or announce, and notice what happens internally. You might discover a deeper, more satisfying form of fulfillment than any social media likes could provide. Drop this affirmation: my kindness needs no audience. Principle 4. Release resentment in private, not public. Have you ever felt the weight of resentment? That heavy, toxic burden you carry when someone has wronged you, betrayed you, or hurt you deeply. It sits in your chest like a stone, coloring your thoughts and poisoning your peace. The Stoics understood resentment intimately, but their approach to handling it reveals profound wisdom about human nature and emotional freedom. Here's what most people do with resentment. They broadcast it. They tell their story of victimhood to anyone who will listen. They nurse the grievance, rehearse the injustice, and build a narrative around how they've been wronged. And with each retelling, the resentment grows stronger, deeper, more entrenched. But the Stoics taught a radically different approach. Marcus Aurelius, who certainly had ample opportunity to resent others given the betrayals and difficulties he faced as emperor, wrote in his private journal, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Notice he wrote this to himself, not as a public declaration. He processed his feelings privately and chose a response aligned with virtue. Why is this distinction so important? When you publicly share your resentments, several destructive patterns emerge. First, you're essentially asking others to validate your victimhood. You want them to agree that you were wrong, to sympathize with your suffering, to join you in condemning the person who hurt you. And often, you get what you're seeking. People do sympathize. They do validate. They do join your chorus of condemnation. But here's the problem. This external validation actually reinforces your resentment rather than healing it. Each person who agrees with you gives you another reason to hold onto the grudge. Second, public sharing of resentment often becomes a form of indirect revenge. You're damaging the other person's reputation, turning people against them, creating social consequences for their actions. And while this might feel satisfying temporarily, it doesn't actually free you from the burden of resentment. It just adds the weight of revenge to the weight you're already carrying. The Stoics recognize that resentment is fundamentally self-destructive. When you hold a grudge, who suffers most? Not the person who wronged you. They might not even be aware of your feelings. You suffer. You carry the poison. You replay the injury in your mind. You allow that past event to contaminate your present experience. Epictetus taught that we should seek to understand before we judge. Often, people who hurt us are acting from their own pain, ignorance, or limitation. They're trapped in their own patterns. And while this doesn't excuse harmful behavior, understanding it can free us from the need to carry resentment. The Stoic approach to processing resentment is internal and private. You acknowledge the hurt. You feel the emotions fully without suppressing them. You examine the situation with honesty. What actually happened? What story am I telling myself about it? What can I learn from this experience? Then comes the crucial step. You choose to release it, not for the other person's benefit, but for your own freedom. You recognize that carrying resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. It's self-destructive and ultimately pointless. This doesn't mean you condone harmful behavior or that you must maintain relationships with people who consistently hurt you. The Stoics were advocates of healthy boundaries, but it means you process the emotions, extract any lessons, and then consciously choose to let go of the resentment itself. By handling this process privately, you maintain dignity. You don't become someone who airs grievances publicly. You don't invite others into your emotional processes unnecessarily. You take full responsibility for your own healing and freedom. There's also wisdom in recognizing that forgiveness is not primarily about the other person, it's about you. When you forgive, you're not saying what they did was okay. You're saying you refuse to carry the weight of it anymore. You're reclaiming your peace, your freedom, your power. The Stoics understood that anger and resentment are like fire. When fed, they consume everything. They destroy your peace, your relationships, your ability to experience joy. But when you stop feeding them, stop talking about them, stop rehearsing them, stop seeking validation for them, they eventually burn out. This requires tremendous courage and self-awareness. It's much easier to play the victim, to gather sympathy, to hold grudges. The path of forgiveness and release is harder, but it's also the path to freedom. Consider this. Every moment you spend in resentment is a moment you're not spending in peace, joy, or growth. Every ounce of energy you give to nursing grievances is energy unavailable for building the life you actually want. The cost of resentment is your present and future, sacrificed on the altar of past hurt. The Stoic invitation is clear. Process your hurt privately with the help of a trusted confidant if needed. Examine it honestly. Extract its lessons. Then consciously choose to release it, not as a gift to the person who hurt you, but as a gift to yourself. Drop this affirmation. I release what no longer serves me. Principle 5. Protect your deepest dreams from premature exposure. Imagine holding a fragile seed in your palm. It contains all the potential for a magnificent tree, shade, fruit, beauty, strength. But right now, it's vulnerable. It needs the right conditions to germinate and grow. If you expose it to harsh elements too soon, it will die before it ever has a chance to become what it was meant to be. Your deepest dreams work exactly the same way. The Stoics understood something that modern culture has largely forgotten. Not all things benefit from exposure. Some things need darkness, privacy, and protection to develop properly. Your most meaningful aspirations fall into this category. When you share a dream too early, several things can happen, most of them detrimental to actually achieving that dream. First, you encounter the voice of skepticism. Well-meaning friends and family who immediately tell you all the reasons your dream won't work, all the obstacles you'll face, all the ways you'll fail. They're not necessarily trying to hurt you. They might genuinely believe they're protecting you from disappointment, but their skepticism becomes a seed of doubt in your mind. Second, you face the danger of mockery or ridicule. Not everyone will support your vision. Some people feel threatened by others' ambitions because it highlights their own lack of drive. Others simply don't understand what you're trying to create, and their laughter or dismissive comments can be devastating to a dream that hasn't yet developed strong roots. Third, and perhaps most insidiously, you might receive premature praise. People might tell you how great your idea is, how talented you are, how excited they are to see you succeed. And while this feels good, it's actually dangerous, because your brain can mistake the social reward of sharing the dream for the actual reward of achieving it. You get a dopamine hit from the praise, which can reduce your motivation to do the hard work required to make the dream real. The Stoics advocated for something radical: self-sufficiency in ambition. True achievement doesn't need external cheerleading. It doesn't require constant validation or encouragement from others. It emerges from an internal commitment so deep that external opinions become irrelevant. Marcus Aurelius pursued philosophy and virtue not because people applauded him for it, but because he believed it was right. His deepest aspirations were guided by internal principles, not external validation, and this gave him tremendous resilience in the face of criticism, setbacks, and opposition. When you keep your deepest dreams private, you create a sacred space for them to develop. You can nurture them without the interference of others' doubts, fears, or projections. You can fail, adjust, and try again without an audience documenting every misstep. There's also the matter of energy. Every time you talk about what you're going to do, you're spending energy that could be used actually doing it. Words are cheap. Action is costly. The Stoics understood that talking about your plans creates the illusion of progress without the reality of it. How many people have you met who constantly talk about the book they're going to write, the business they're going to start, the change they're going to make? And how many of them actually do it? Very few, because they're substituting talking for doing. By maintaining silence about your deepest dreams, you channel all that energy into action. You stop performing your ambition and start living it. You measure progress by what you've actually accomplished, not by how many people know about your intentions. Stoic principle of humility also applies here. When you're constantly announcing your grand plans, there's an element of arrogance. You're essentially saying, "Look how important I'm going to be. Look at this amazing thing I'm going to do." But humility says, let your actions speak. Let your results demonstrate your capability. Don't announce, achieve. This doesn't mean you can never share your dreams or that you must work in complete isolation, but it means being strategic about when and with whom you share. Choose carefully. Share with mentors who can provide genuine guidance. Share with collaborators who will help you build. But don't broadcast to the masses before you've laid a solid foundation. There's profound wisdom in the idea of letting your work speak for itself. Instead of announcing that you're writing a book, write it and then share the finished product. Instead of proclaiming you're starting a business, build it quietly and then open your doors. Instead of declaring your intention to transform your life, do the work in private and let people notice the results. The Stoics also understood that plans often need to evolve. When you've publicly committed to a specific path, it becomes harder to adjust course when you gain new information. Your ego gets involved. You don't want to appear inconsistent or like you failed. But when you're working privately, you have complete freedom to experiment, pivot, and refine your approach without external judgment. Protecting your deepest dreams is an act of love and wisdom. You're giving them the environment they need to grow strong. You're shielding them from destructive forces. You're respecting their fragility while nurturing their potential. And when the time is right, when roots are deep and the structure is strong, then you can share what you've built. not as a promise or intention, but as a reality, not as a dream, but as an achievement. Drop this affirmation. I protect my dreams in silence and reveal them through action. Principle 6. Keep your strategic moves private. Imagine a chess master playing a crucial match. After each move they make, they announce to their opponent exactly what they're trying to accomplish. I'm setting up a fork with my knight. I'm planning to castle next turn. My ultimate goal is to trap your queen. Absurd, right? Yet this is exactly what many people do with their life strategies. The Stoics understood the value of discretion when it comes to your plans and tactics. Not because they advocated deception or manipulation, but because they recognized that not everyone needs or deserves to know your next moves. When Epictetus taught his students, he emphasized the importance of focusing on what's within your control and ignoring what isn't. Other people's opinions, judgments, and reactions fall firmly in the not within your control category. So why would you give them advance notice of your plans, inviting their input on decisions that are ultimately yours alone to make? There are several practical reasons for keeping your strategic moves private. First, you avoid sabotage. Not everyone in your life wants to see you succeed. Some people are threatened by your growth because it highlights their own stagnation. Others are competitive and view your success as their loss. Still others are simply negative and will find problems with any plan you propose. By keeping your strategies to yourself, you eliminate their opportunity to interfere. Second, you maintain flexibility. When you've publicly committed to a specific strategy, it becomes harder to change course if circumstances shift or you gain new information. Your ego gets involved. You don't want to look inconsistent or indecisive. But when you're working quietly, you can pivot as needed without explanation or justification. Third, you cultivate self-reliance. The Stoics placed tremendous value on developing an internal locus of control, the ability to guide yourself based on your own judgment rather than constantly seeking external input. When you keep your plans private, you're forced to trust your own decision-making. You can't outsource responsibility to others' advice or opinions. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful man in the Roman Empire, kept many of his philosophical reflections and personal strategies private. His Meditations, now one of the most influential philosophical texts ever written, was never intended for publication. It was his private journal, a space where he could think clearly without performing for an audience. This privacy allowed him to be completely honest with himself. He could acknowledge doubts, explore uncertainties, and work through complex decisions without concern for how others would judge these internal processes. The result was clearer thinking and better decision-making. There's also the matter of energy and focus. Every time you explain your plans to someone, you're using mental and emotional energy that could be directed toward executing those plans. You're also opening yourself to their questions, doubts, and suggestions, all of which can create mental clutter and distraction. The Stoic approach is to conserve this energy. Think deeply about your path. Make your decisions based on virtue and reason. Then execute quietly while others are still talking about what they're going to do. This doesn't mean you should never seek advice or input. The Stoics valued wisdom from mentors and the counsel of friends. But there's a difference between carefully selected consultation and broadcasting your every move to anyone who will listen. Choose your advisors wisely. Share with people who have relevant expertise, who genuinely care about your success, and who have demonstrated wisdom in their own lives. Ignore the impulse to share with people who will simply tell you what you want to hear or who lack the context to provide meaningful guidance. There's also a psychological phenomenon at play. When you talk extensively about your plans, your brain can experience a premature sense of completion. You get social rewards, attention, interest, praise, which can reduce your motivation to actually execute. The announcement feels like progress, even though nothing has actually been accomplished. By keeping your strategic moves private, you maintain hunger. You stay focused on the intrinsic rewards of actually achieving your goals rather than the extrinsic rewards of social approval for your intentions. The Stoics also recognize that maintaining some mystery creates a certain kind of power. When people can't predict your next move, When they don't have access to your complete strategy, you maintain an element of surprise and autonomy. This isn't about being secretive for its own sake. It's about protecting your agency and freedom of action. Consider the alternative. When everyone knows your plans, you face constant commentary. Have you done that thing you said you were going to do? How's that project coming along? I thought you were supposed to be further along by now. These well-meaning check-ins can actually create pressure and anxiety that interfere with your natural pace and process. But when you work quietly, you move at your own rhythm. You answer only to yourself and your own standards. You can take the time needed to do things properly rather than rushing to meet others' expectations or timelines. This principle also protects you from the toxic dynamics of comparison and competition. When you're constantly announcing your moves, you invite others to measure themselves against you, or you against them. But when you work privately, you eliminate this dynamic. You're simply focused on your own path, your own progress, your own standards of excellence. The Stoic ideal is to be like deep water, calm on the surface, powerful beneath. You don't need to make waves to prove you're moving. You don't need to announce your depth. Those who need to know will discover it through direct experience. Others' opinions are irrelevant, so guard your strategies. Think carefully about who truly needs to know your plans. Execute quietly. Let your results speak. And enjoy the freedom that comes from moving through the world without constantly explaining yourself. Drop this affirmation: I move strategically in silence. Principle 7. Process doubts internally, not publicly. Every human being experiences doubt, uncertainty about decisions, questions about direction, moments where confidence wavers and the path ahead seems unclear. This is universal. This is normal. This is part of the human experience. But here's where people diverge. Some broadcast every doubt to anyone who will listen, while others process uncertainty privately and emerge stronger. The Stoics firmly advocated for the latter approach. When Epictetus taught about confidence and certainty, he wasn't suggesting that Stoics never experienced doubt. Rather, he was teaching that doubt should be processed internally, examined rationally, and resolved through reason, not performed publicly as a way of seeking reassurance. Why is this distinction so important? First, when you constantly share your doubts and uncertainties, you're essentially advertising your vulnerabilities. In a perfect world, everyone would respond with supportive, constructive input. But we don't live in a perfect world. Some people will use your expressed doubts against you. Others will lose confidence in your abilities. Still others will project their own fears onto your situation, amplifying your uncertainty rather than helping you resolve it. Second, public expression of doubt can become a form of identity. When you repeatedly tell people, "I'm not sure if I can do this," or "I don't know if this is the right path," you're not just expressing temporary uncertainty. You're reinforcing a self-concept of someone who is doubtful and uncertain. Language shapes identity. The stories you tell about yourself become who you are. Third, seeking constant external reassurance prevents you from developing internal confidence. True confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's the ability to move forward despite doubt. It's trusting yourself to handle whatever comes, even when you can't see the entire path clearly. But you can't develop this confidence if you're always outsourcing your decision-making to others' reassurance. The Stoics understood that confidence is an inside job. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that he had the internal resources to handle whatever life presented. He didn't need external validation to know he was on the right path. He looked inward, aligned with his principles, and moved forward. This doesn't mean Stoics never sought counsel or wisdom from others. But there's a crucial difference between thoughtfully consulting with a mentor about a genuine decision point and constantly broadcasting your uncertainties to anyone who will listen. When you do need to process doubt, the Stoic approach is methodical and private. You sit with the uncertainty. You examine it rationally. What specifically am I doubting? Is this doubt based on evidence or just fear? What's the worst that could happen? Can I handle that outcome? What do my principles suggest is the right path? This internal examination often reveals that many doubts are based on emotion rather than reason. You're not actually uncertain about what to do, you're afraid of the discomfort involved in doing it. The Stoics taught that recognizing this distinction is crucial for clear thinking. There's also the matter of dignity and respect, both self-respect and the respect others have for you. When you're constantly expressing doubts and seeking reassurance, you position yourself as uncertain and dependent. People begin to see you as someone who lacks conviction and self-trust. But when you process doubts internally and present yourself with quiet confidence, even when you're wrestling with uncertainty privately, people perceive you as someone who is self-possessed and capable. This perception actually becomes self-reinforcing. When others treat you as confident, it becomes easier to feel confident. The Stoics also recognize that some degree of uncertainty is simply the human condition. We can never have perfect information. We can never eliminate all risk. We can never be absolutely certain about future outcomes. Accepting this reality is part of wisdom. Instead of seeking certainty where it doesn't exist, the Stoic approach is to focus on what you can control: your values, your effort, your response to whatever happens. You make the best decision you can with available information, aligned with your principles, and then you accept the outcome with equanimity. This approach frees you from the paralysis of seeking perfect certainty before acting. It allows you to move forward despite doubt. And paradoxically, this willingness to act despite uncertainty often resolves the doubt itself. You discover through experience that you're more capable than you feared. By keeping your doubts private, you also protect your goals and dreams from being contaminated by others' fears. When you express uncertainty about your path, well-meaning people often reinforce that uncertainty by sharing all the reasons you should be doubtful. But when you work through doubt privately, you protect your vision from this destructive input. Moreover, private processing of doubt allows for more honest self-examination. When you're performing your uncertainty publicly, there's always a subtle element of seeking sympathy or lower expectations. But when you're alone with your thoughts, you can be completely honest. Am I genuinely uncertain, or am I just afraid? Am I doubting my path, or am I just doubting my ability to handle discomfort? The Stoic invitation is to develop such strong internal confidence that external validation becomes unnecessary. To build self-trust so solid that doubt becomes a temporary visitor rather than a permanent resident. To process uncertainty with the private counsel of reason rather than the public performance of anxiety. This doesn't mean you become arrogant or closed to feedback. It means you develop the wisdom to distinguish between useful input and noise. It means you maintain the dignity of working through difficult questions without making a public spectacle of your internal process. So the next time doubt arises, resist the urge to immediately share it. Sit with it privately. Examine it with reason. Consult with a trusted mentor if needed, but don't broadcast it to the masses. Process it internally, extract its wisdom, and move forward with quiet confidence. Drop this affirmation: I trust my ability to work through uncertainty. Principle 8. Refuse to gossip or criticize others. Imagine standing beside a calm lake. The water is perfectly still, reflecting the sky like a mirror. Then someone throws a stone. Ripples spread across the entire surface, disturbing the peace and clarity. This is what happens when you engage in gossip or criticism of others. You're throwing stones into the calm waters of your own mind and the collective consciousness of your community. The Stoics understood this profoundly. They recognized that criticizing and judging others is fundamentally a waste of energy that could be directed toward your own improvement and growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about the futility of concerning yourself with others' faults. He reminded himself that every person is dealing with their own internal battles, operating from their own level of understanding, and following their own path. Judging them doesn't improve them or you. It simply creates negativity and discord. But beyond the philosophical arguments, there are deeply practical reasons for refusing to gossip or criticize. First, when you criticize others, you reveal more about yourself than about them. What bothers you about someone else is often a reflection of something you're struggling with internally. The person who constantly criticizes others for being lazy might be wrestling with their own productivity. The person who judges others for being too emotional might be suppressing their own feelings. The Stoics encouraged radical self-awareness. Instead of pointing out others' flaws, turn that critical eye inward. What can you improve in yourself? Where are you falling short of your own standards? This internal focus is infinitely more productive than external criticism. Second, gossip and criticism create separation and toxicity in relationships. When you talk negatively about someone, even if they never hear about it, you're poisoning your own mind and the minds of whoever is listening. You're creating an environment of judgment rather than understanding, separation rather than connection. The Stoic ideal is to build community based on virtue, mutual respect, and shared growth. Gossip undermines all of these. It creates factions, breeds distrust, and encourages people to hide their true selves for fear of being judged. Third, engaging in criticism of others wastes precious mental energy. Your attention is a limited resource. Every moment you spend focused on someone else's faults is a moment you're not spending on your own development. Every ounce of energy you give to judgment is unavailable for growth. The Stoics were masters of focus and discipline. They understood that excellence requires concentrated effort. Dissipating that effort through gossip and criticism is fundamentally incompatible with the pursuit of virtue. There's also the matter of empathy and compassion. The Stoics, despite their reputation for emotional detachment, actually advocated for deep understanding of human nature. They recognized that everyone is fighting battles you know nothing about. Everyone is doing the best they can with their current level of consciousness and capability. When you criticize someone for their choices or behaviors, you're essentially saying, "If I were you, with my experiences, my knowledge, and my perspective, I wouldn't do that." But you're not them. You don't have their history, their pain, their limitations, or their understanding. So your criticism is based on incomplete information. The Stoic alternative is compassion without judgment. You can recognize that someone's behavior is harmful or unwise without needing to condemn them as a person. You can maintain healthy boundaries with people whose values don't align with yours without needing to tear them down. This approach doesn't mean you become passive in the face of injustice or that you never stand up for what's right. The Stoics were advocates of justice as a cardinal virtue, but there's a profound difference between standing against harmful behavior and engaging in personal criticism or gossip. When you refuse to gossip or criticize, you also protect your own reputation and character. People notice who participates in negative talk and who doesn't. When you consistently refuse to engage in criticism of others, you become known as someone who is trustworthy, dignified, and focused on higher pursuits. Conversely, people who gossip are never truly trusted. Everyone knows that if they're willing to talk about others behind their backs, they're probably doing the same about you. The gossip creates a culture of suspicion and superficiality. The Stoic practice is to speak about others as if they were present. Ask yourself, would I say this if the person were standing right here? If the answer is no, then don't say it at all. This simple filter eliminates most gossip and criticism immediately. There's also a spiritual dimension to this practice. Many wisdom traditions teach that you cannot elevate your own consciousness while simultaneously putting others down. Criticism and judgment keep you operating at a lower frequency of consciousness. Understanding and compassion elevate you. When you feel the urge to criticize someone, the Stoic approach is to pause and redirect that energy. What is this person's behavior teaching me? What boundaries do I need to set? How can I show up with more integrity in my own life? These questions transform criticism into growth. So make a commitment. Refuse to participate in gossip or criticism of others. When conversations turn negative, either redirect them to more constructive topics or quietly excuse yourself. Don't engage. Don't contribute. Don't participate. This doesn't make you judgmental of those who do gossip. That would just be another form of criticism. It simply means you're choosing a different path. A path of focusing on what you can control, honoring others' dignity, and preserving your own peace and energy for what truly matters. Drop this affirmation. I focus on my own growth, not others' faults. Principle 9. Treasure your solitude privately in a world that celebrates constant connection, perpetual availability, and endless social interaction. solitude has become almost countercultural. Many people fear being alone with their own thoughts. They fill every quiet moment with noise, distraction, or digital connection. But the Stoics understood something profound. Solitude is not isolation, it's sanctuary. Marcus Aurelius, despite being surrounded by thousands of people as Emperor of Rome, regularly retreated into what he called the inner citadel, a place of mental solitude where he could think clearly, reflect deeply, and reconnect with his principles. Why is protecting your solitude so important? First, solitude is where genuine self-knowledge develops. When you're constantly interacting with others, responding to external stimuli, and managing social dynamics, you're operating in reaction mode. You're responding to the world rather than creating from within. But in solitude, you can simply be. You can observe your own thoughts without judgment. You can notice patterns in your behavior. You can ask yourself deep questions about who you are, what you value, and where you're going. This kind of self-examination is impossible in the noise and activity of constant social engagement. The Stoics placed tremendous value on self-awareness. Epictetus taught that understanding yourself is the foundation of all wisdom. But this understanding requires time alone with your own mind, examining your thoughts, beliefs, and assumptions without the distorting influence of others' opinions. Second, solitude is where creativity and insight emerge. The greatest ideas, solutions to complex problems, and moments of clarity often arise not in bustling activity but in quiet reflection. Your brain needs space to process, integrate, and generate new connections. When you're constantly consuming information and engaging with others, your mind is in input mode. Solitude allows it to shift to processing and creation mode. This is where innovation happens. This is where you synthesize what you've learned into original thought. Third, solitude builds independence and self-sufficiency. When you're comfortable being alone with yourself, you're not dependent on external stimulation, validation, or entertainment for your sense of well-being. You've developed internal resources that sustain you regardless of external circumstances. The Stoics understood that true freedom is internal. You can be surrounded by people and still feel lonely if you don't have a strong connection to yourself. Conversely, you can be physically alone and feel completely at peace if you've cultivated rich inner life. But here's the key principle. Why should you keep your solitude private rather than posting about it on social media or constantly telling people about your need for alone time? Because the moment you make solitude a performance, it ceases to be genuine solitude. If you're taking photos of your peaceful morning routine to post online, you're not really alone with yourself. You're curating an image for an audience. If you're telling everyone about how much you value alone time, you're performing independence rather than living it. True solitude is sacred and private. It's a time when you're not performing for anyone, not explaining yourself to anyone, not available to anyone. It's pure presence with yourself. The Stoics also recognize that constantly announcing your need for solitude can actually damage relationships. When you make a big deal about needing time alone, it can make others feel rejected or like they're a burden. But when you simply maintain healthy boundaries without fanfare, people adjust naturally. Moreover, there's power in mystery. When people can't track your every movement or account for all your time, you maintain autonomy and space. You're not constantly available, constantly explaining, constantly performing. You're simply a person who values and protects time for reflection and solitude. This doesn't mean you can never share the insights that arise from solitude, or that you must hide the fact that you value alone time. But it means being intentional about what you share and why. Are you sharing to inspire others toward reflection, or are you sharing to perform a certain image? The practice of valuing solitude also protects you from the modern epidemic of constant distraction. When you've cultivated the ability to be peacefully alone with your thoughts, you're not compulsively reaching for your phone to fill every quiet moment. You're not dependent on external stimulation to feel okay. This creates a foundation of inner stability that's invaluable. In a crisis, when external supports might disappear, you have the resource of your own mind. In moments of decision, You can access your own wisdom rather than constantly polling others for opinions. The Stoic invitation is to develop such a rich inner life that solitude becomes a treasured experience rather than something to avoid, to make friends with your own mind, to find peace in your own company, and to protect this sacred space from the pressure to constantly share, explain, or perform. So build regular solitude into your life, whether it's a morning practice, a weekly retreat, or simply moments throughout your day when you disconnect and turn inward. Make this time non-negotiable. And keep it private. Let it be yours alone, a sanctuary that no one else can access or disturb. Drop this affirmation: I find strength in solitude. Principle 10. Keep unlearned lessons. Private failure is universal. Every person who has ever attempted anything meaningful has experienced setbacks, mistakes, and moments where things didn't go as planned. This is not a flaw in the system, it's how the system works. Failure is feedback. Error is education. But here's where people diverge. Some broadcast every failure and unlearned lesson to anyone who will listen, while others process these experiences privately, extract their wisdom, and emerge stronger. The Stoics firmly advocated for the latter approach. When Marcus Aurelius made mistakes in judgment, experienced failures in leadership, or faced personal shortcomings, he didn't publish these for public consumption. He reflected on them privately in his journal, examining what went wrong and how he could improve. Why this approach? First, when you constantly announce your failures and unlearned lessons, you risk making them part of your identity. I'm someone who struggles with X. I can't seem to Y. I always fail at Z. These statements might feel like honest self-assessment, but they're actually self-limiting prophecies. Language shapes reality. The stories you tell about yourself become who you are. When you repeatedly narrate your failures without the context of growth and learning, you reinforce the pattern rather than interrupting it. Second, public sharing of unlearned lessons often becomes a subtle form of excuse-making. By announcing your struggles, you're essentially lowering expectations, both your own and others. You're creating social permission to continue failing in this area because everyone knows it's hard for you. But the Stoic approach is radically different. Take full responsibility privately. Don't make excuses. Don't seek sympathy. Simply examine what went wrong, determine what needs to change, and implement that change. Third, there's the matter of dignity and self-respect. The Stoics valued maintaining composure and character even in the face of difficulty. Constantly broadcasting your failures can erode your sense of dignity. It can make you feel exposed and diminished. By processing failures privately, you maintain agency. You're the author of your own story. You decide what these experiences mean and how they shape you. You don't hand that narrative power to the court of public opinion. This doesn't mean you can never acknowledge mistakes or share lessons learned. But there's a crucial difference between sharing integrated wisdom from past mistakes and performing ongoing struggle. The integrated wisdom sharing sounds like, I learned that X approach doesn't work well, so now I do Y instead. It's solution-focused and forward-looking. The performance of struggle sounds like, I just can't seem to get this right. I keep failing at X, I don't know what to do. It's problem-focused and stuck in the present difficulty. The Stoics understood that genuine transformation requires privacy to unfold. Just as a caterpillar needs the darkness and isolation of the cocoon to become a butterfly, personal growth often requires space away from external observation and commentary. When you work through your failures privately, you can experiment freely. You can try new approaches without fear of being judged. You can fail multiple times in quick succession without losing face. You can adjust your strategy as many times as needed. But when you've made your struggles public, every adjustment becomes a performance. Every setback is witnessed and commented on. Every change in direction requires explanation. This external pressure can actually interfere with the natural process of learning and adaptation. There's also wisdom in recognizing that not every lesson needs to be learned on the first try. Some patterns take time to break. Some skills take extended practice to develop. Some insights only become clear after multiple iterations. By keeping these processes private, you give yourself permission to be human, to learn at your own pace, to make mistakes without shame, to grow without performing growth for an audience. The Stoic practice when facing unlearned lessons is methodical and private. First, acknowledge the failure honestly. No excuses, no blame. What actually happened? Second, examine the causes. What led to this outcome? What was within your control that you could have done differently? Third, extract the lesson. What does this teach you? What will you do differently next time? Fourth, implement the change. Don't just understand intellectually, actually modify your behavior. Fifth, test and refine. Keep working with the new approach until it becomes natural. None of these steps require an audience. In fact, they work better without one. When you do eventually master something you previously struggled with, that mastery speaks for itself. People notice the change. They see the growth. And the respect you earn through quiet transformation is far more valuable than the sympathy you might have gotten by broadcasting your struggles. So guard your growing edges. Protect the vulnerable areas where you're still learning. Work through failures with the privacy they deserve. And emerge stronger, wiser, and more capable, without having performed the entire process for public consumption. Drop this affirmation. I grow through failure privately and powerfully. Principle 11. Protect your deepest plans from premature disclosure. There's a particular kind of energy that exists in the early stages of a plan. A delicate, potent mixture of vision, possibility, and commitment. This energy is precious. It's what carries you through the difficult early stages when external results aren't yet visible. The Stoics understood that this energy needs protection. When Epictetus taught about pursuing goals, he emphasized focusing on what's within your control and maintaining independence from external validation. These principles apply especially to how you handle your deepest plans and long-term strategies. Why should you keep these plans private? First, premature disclosure dilutes commitment. When you tell everyone about your grand plans, your brain experiences a phenomenon psychologists call social reality. By announcing your intention, you receive social acknowledgement as if you've already accomplished something. This acknowledgement satisfies part of your motivation system, making you less likely to actually execute. You've probably experienced this. You have a brilliant idea, you get excited and tell everyone about it. People respond enthusiastically, and then somehow the motivation to actually do it fades. You've already received the social reward, so the drive to earn the actual achievement diminishes. The Stoic approach is to maintain hunger by keeping plans private. Don't dilute your commitment through premature sharing. Save the energy for execution rather than explanation. Second, early disclosure invites interference. The moment you share your plans, you open them to others' doubts, fears, and limitations. Even well-meaning people will immediately think of all the reasons your plan might not work. They'll project their own fears onto your vision. This isn't necessarily malicious. Often, people genuinely believe they're helping by pointing out potential problems, but the effect is the same. They introduce doubt and hesitation that can derail your commitment before you've even begun. By keeping plans private, you protect them from this destructive input. You maintain the clarity and conviction needed to move forward despite obstacles. Third, announcing plans creates external pressure and expectations that can distort your approach. Once you've told people what you're going to do, you're no longer free to adjust course when you gain new information. Your ego gets involved. You don't want to look inconsistent or like you failed. But the Stoic path values truth over appearance. You should be free to pivot when wisdom suggests a different approach. This freedom is only possible when you're not accountable to others' expectations based on your announced plans. Marcus Aurelius executed tremendous plans during his reign, but he didn't announce every strategy before implementing it. He reflected privately, made decisions aligned with his principles, and then acted. The results spoke for themselves. There's also the practical matter of competition and sabotage. Not everyone in your life wishes you well. Some people feel threatened by your ambition. Others are competitive and view your success as their loss. By broadcasting your plans, you give these people opportunity to interfere, discourage, or even actively work against you. The Stoic approach protects you from these dynamics. Work quietly. Build in private. Let results be your announcement. This doesn't mean you can never discuss your goals or that you must work in complete isolation. The Stoics valued wisdom and counsel from appropriate sources. But there's a difference between strategic consultation with mentors and broadcasting to everyone what you're planning to do. Choose your confidants carefully. Share with people who have relevant expertise, proven wisdom, and genuine care for your success. Ignore the urge to announce your plans to casual acquaintances, social media followers, or anyone whose input won't actually improve your execution. The other profound benefit of keeping plans private is that it allows you to focus entirely on the work itself rather than managing others' perceptions. When you've announced your plans, you face constant questions. How's that project going? Have you made progress? When will it be done? These questions, even when well-intentioned, create pressure and distraction. But when you work quietly, you move at your own pace. You answer only to yourself and your own standards. You can take the time needed to do things properly. The Stoic ideal is to measure yourself by internal standards, virtue, wisdom, integrity, rather than external metrics. This is only possible when you've insulated yourself from constant external commentary about your progress. There's also the element of surprise and impact. When you work privately and then reveal completed work rather than announced intentions, the impact is much greater. People are impressed by results in a way they never are by plans. Think about people you admire. Do you respect them more for what they've announced they're going to do or for what they've actually accomplished? The answer is obvious. Results earn respect. Announcements earn empty praise at best and skepticism at worst. Finally, keeping plans private builds a particular kind of character, the kind that finds satisfaction in the work itself rather than in recognition for the work. This internal satisfaction is more sustainable and more genuine than external validation. The Stoic invitation is clear: protect your deepest plans. Guard them like precious seeds that need darkness and privacy to germinate. Work quietly, execute deliberately, and when the time is right, let your results announce what your words never needed to. Drop this final affirmation: I protect my vision and prove it through action. Closing, we've explored 11 profound principles that the Stoics understood about the power of privacy and silence. Each principle points to the same fundamental truth: not everything benefits from exposure. Some things grow stronger in darkness. Some things develop power in privacy. Some things achieve their fullest potential when protected from premature disclosure. In a world that celebrates constant sharing, performance, and exposure, these Stoic principles offer a radically different path. A path of internal focus, private development, and strategic silence. A path where your greatest achievements are often those no one knows about, where your deepest growth happens away from external observation, where your truest power comes from what you protect rather than what you display. This doesn't mean becoming secretive or closed off. It means becoming intentional about what you share and why. It means understanding that some things are sacred and deserve protection. It means recognizing that silence is often more powerful than speech. The 11 principles we've covered. Guard your achievements in silence, keep your unfinished battles private, never broadcast your acts of kindness, release resentment in private. Not public, protect your deepest dreams from premature exposure. Keep your strategic moves private, process doubts internally. Not publicly, refuse to gossip or criticize others, treasure your solitude privately, keep unlearned lessons private, protect your deepest plans from premature disclosure. Each of these principles, when applied, will strengthen your character, protect your energy, and accelerate your growth. They work together to create a life of depth, integrity, and genuine power. The Stoic path isn't easy. It requires discipline to resist the urge to share everything. It demands strength to process challenges privately when broadcasting them would earn sympathy. It takes wisdom to recognize what deserves protection and what benefits from sharing. But those who walk this path discover something profound. True power is quiet. Real strength needs no announcement. Genuine wisdom often whispers rather than shouts. So starting today, begin implementing these principles. Choose one that resonates most strongly and commit to practicing it. Notice what happens when you guard what matters rather than exposing everything. Observe how silence can create space for growth that constant sharing prevents. And remember, you're not hiding, you're protecting. You're not being secretive, you're being strategic. You're not isolating. You're cultivating depth. If these principles resonated with you, drop this final commitment in the comments. I embrace the power of strategic silence. And if you're serious about this path of inner strength and Stoic wisdom, subscribe to Strength Within. We're building a community of people who understand that the most powerful transformations often happen in silence. Thank you for investing this time in your growth. The ancient Stoics left us profound wisdom about living with virtue, purpose, and inner strength. Now it's our responsibility to apply these timeless principles to our modern lives. The path is clear. The choice is yours. Walk it with wisdom, courage, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're building something real, something that doesn't need external validation to be valuable. Let's continue growing together in strength and in silence.